Christopher sat in the lobby with his hands folded, face calm, suit pressed, and eyes tracing the slow tick of the wall clock. But something in his stillness didn't belong. You ever stare at someone too long and realize they're not actually waiting for anything? That they're just watching? That was Christopher, and the receptionist, Abby, felt it too. She said his name once, then again, but he never blinked, never turned, just smiled. The kind of smile people usually reserve for gravesides or silent revenge. And then, without any obvious motion, he stood up. Not slowly, not suddenly, just stood. And whispered something to her. Something only she heard. A sentence so quiet the air didn't carry it. But her face collapsed in on itself, like she'd just been handed a truth she'd spent her whole life trying to ignore. The next moment, she was gone. I don't mean she ran out the door. I mean, she vanished, physically. No footsteps, no exit, just empty space where she had been, still holding her cup of coffee in midair, which shattered when it hit the floor a second later. No one moved. No one screamed. Because no one else remembered she was ever there. No one. Except me. You clicked this video for a reason, didn't you? Maybe the title pulled you in. Maybe you thought this was another one of those corporate takedown stories where the powerful get exposed and the underdog wins. But this isn't that kind of story. This is about something darker. Something hidden inside places you thought were just ordinary. Offices, interviews, a waiting room with flickering fluorescent lights and a carpet that's just slightly too clean. It starts like a story you think you've heard before, but it ends with something no one can explain, not even him. The man's name is Christopher Moore. He came in for an interview at Halverson Tech last Tuesday, a mid-sized software firm in Austin, Texas. Standard resume, quiet demeanor, nothing special on paper, except no one could verify where he lived before 2009. No address, no phone bills, no relatives. His social security number checked out, but the issuance date was listed as unavailable. The HR manager shrugged it off, until Christopher sat down across from Jeremy, regional lead, arrogant as hell, known for grilling applicants just to feel bigger, and the whole room changed. Was there, sitting in on the interview. I remember Jeremy scoffing as he read Christopher's credentials. You call this experience? I've seen interns with more hustle. He leaned back, smirked, and added, So tell me, Chris, why should a real company waste time on someone who clearly peaked in 2015? Everyone expected Christopher to stumble, maybe apologize, but he didn't blink. He didn't laugh. He just looked at Jeremy and asked a single question. Do you know who you are when no one's watching? The lights flickered once. The AC unit groaned, and Jeremy. He just stared. Not angry, not embarrassed, just lost. Like something ancient had crawled into his mind and started rearranging things. He tried to speak, opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. But nothing. Came out? He just sat there, his mouth trembling like he'd just remembered a nightmare he didn't know was real until now. I looked around the room. Everyone else just went back to typing, smiling like Jeremy didn't exist, like he was the one who'd vanished this time. But I saw him. I still see him. Still frozen in that chair, still haunted by that question, and here's the thing. I went to the security team the next morning to ask about the footage. I needed proof, because something about that moment wasn't right. But when I looked through the logs, the files from that interview, only that interview, were marked as deleted by founder approval. The founder's been dead 6 years. What Christopher whispered to Abby? I've tried to reconstruct it. There's no audio, but there's a mirror on the wall behind her desk. And if you zoom in on the reflection, you can catch the shape of his mouth. 3 syllables. I matched the movements frame by frame. He said the name, Hannah, but no one. And that building goes by that name, no employee files, no visitors, nothing. Except, when I went through old archives of the building's blueprints, I found something buried. This wasn't always an office. It used to be a state-run orphanage, closed in 1981 after a scandal no one would talk about, and the last child adopted. Before the doors were shut down, her name was Hannah Moore. I need you to stay with me now because the next part changes everything. There's a moment after everything shatters where you try to reach out and grab the pieces of what you thought was real, but they slip through your fingers like smoke. I've replayed that day 1,000 times, and every time I do, something changes. Details disappear. Conversations I swear happened vanish from memory. Faces blur. I thought I understood what I saw, what I heard, but now even I'm not so sure. Was Christopher really there? Did Abby really vanish? Or was my mind trying to stitch a horror out of thin air, a trick played by some fracture deep inside me? The security footage, the only proof, gone. Deleted by founder approval, from a man who's been dead since 2018. It's a phrase that echoes like a cruel joke, a ghostly signature marking a forbidden truth no one is ready to face. When I brought it up to my friend and co-worker Grace, her eyes narrowed and she said something that twisted my gut. Maybe you didn't see what you think you saw. Grace has always been skeptical, but something in her voice wasn't just doubt. It was fear, buried under layers of quiet urgency. She told me stories, half-whispered, about other strange occurrences. Audio glitches in the company calls, voices faint and distorted, memories that don't line up, and files that appear and disappear from the server like someone's playing with the very fabric of reality. I want to believe her, but Grace's truth feels like quicksand. Solid one moment, slipping the next. She's the only one willing to talk about it, but I catch her smiling nervously when I ask for proof. One night she showed me a recording she said came from a hidden microphone near the lobby. The audio was warped, but I swear I heard Abby's voice, faint and panicked, saying something that didn't make sense. They're rewriting me. Then static swallowed the rest. I pressed Grace for more, but she shrugged. That's all we've got. Maybe it's just interference. But her eyes were dark, and when she looked away, I saw the question hanging in the air between us. What don't they want you to remember? It started to get worse. I'd find myself forgetting small things, important things, like what I ate for breakfast, or the names of people I'd worked with for years. Sometimes I'd wake up with bruises I didn't remember getting. Sometimes the office would feel like a cage, like the walls were closing in. The air tasted metallic, heavy with something unspoken. When I mentioned it to Grace, she said, "This isn't normal. It's like we're trapped in someone else's nightmare." The more I tried to piece it together, the more the lines blurred between what was real and what was not. Christopher's calm smile haunted me in dreams, shifting into something else, something accusing. Abby's disappearance wasn't just a ghost story. It was a question about who we are when no one's watching, or maybe about who wants us to be something else. I started to suspect that I wasn't the only one losing my grip. Grace was different too, sometimes too sharp, other times vacant, like she was carrying a secret so heavy it might break her. One evening, after a long day, of trying to convince myself I wasn't losing it, Grace pulled me into a cramped conference room, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. She whispered something I wasn't ready for. There's more, and it's been hidden for decades. Something that started in this building when it was an orphanage. The children there, they weren't just forgotten. They were erased. Like, their stories were rewritten by people who wanted to bury the truth. Her voice cracked. This isn't just a company cover-up. It's a real unsolved mystery. The kind that makes you question your own mind. I stared at her, searching for the lines between paranoia and reality. Was Grace trying to help me see through the lies? Or was she the one tangled in them? She showed me documents, old newspaper clippings about disappearances, whispers of a scandal that was scrubbed clean. But when I asked for the originals, she said, "I can't find them anymore. They might not even exist." The doubt twisted inside me like a knife. What if all of this, the voices, the vanishings, the memories, was just the truth behind what no one tells you? What if the real story was hiding beneath layers of denial and silence? The deeper we dug, the heavier the atmosphere became. I started hearing things in the silence, low murmurs, fragments of conversations that made no sense. people walking by who didn't really pass, reflections in windows that didn't match the room behind me. And in those moments I felt the unbearable weight of being watched, as if the building itself was alive with secrets it refused to share. Grace warned me once, there's a line between uncovering the truth and breaking yourself trying to see. Sometimes the silence is the answer. Sometimes the fear is what they want to trap you with. But I couldn't stop. I wasn't sure if I was chasing reality or running from madness. The question Christopher whispered, "Do you know who you are when no one's watching?" became a mantra I couldn't shake. Because maybe, just maybe, the thing we're most afraid of isn't what they do to us, but what we become when no one's there to witness it. And then, one night, everything changed again. My phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. It was just a single word. Hannah. But beneath it, a second message followed. An audio clip. I pressed play, heart pounding. The voice was faint, trembling but unmistakable. It was Abby, whispering, "Find me before I forget who I am." I replayed it over and over, the line between sanity and fear collapsing. Who was really lost here? The missing receptionist? Christopher, the man with no past, or me? Caught in a truth behind what they don't want you to remember? And as the clip ended, the screen went black, leaving me alone with the question that's become my obsession. Was any of this real, or am I just the latest shadow in a story no one ever wanted told? Because the truth isn't always waiting for you to find it. Sometimes it's waiting to find you. The afternoon light was dimming, the long shadows stretching across the office floor like fingers reaching for something just out of grasp. I remember sitting at my desk, heart hammering in a way that felt almost too loud in the quiet room, clutching a folder I hadn't dared open until now. It was the kind of folder that promised answers, the hidden truth, the key to unraveling everything I'd been chasing for weeks, the kind of discovery that every real unsolved mystery climaxes with, the moment when chaos gives way to clarity. And for a fleeting second, I believed that moment had finally arrived. Inside were old records from the orphanage's final days, detailed incident reports, staff logs, and something that looked like a transcript from a hearing no one ever talked about. The faded typewriter font was almost illegible, but the message was unmistakable. There had been an event, something catastrophic that caused the orphanage to shut down abruptly in 1981. A fire, they said. Accidental. But what wasn't in the report was a single notation scrawled in the margins. Subject HM showed no signs of harm. Disappearance unexplained. That was Hannah Moore, the last child, the name Christopher whispered to Abby, the ghost that refused to die. I felt the room spin a little as I read that line, the past bleeding into the present in a way that was too intimate to ignore. The disappearance had been covered up, erased, buried in paperwork no one would ever willingly touch. But the more I dug, the more the pieces seemed to fit. Christopher's untraceable past, Abby's vanishing act, the deleted footage, all echoes of that original silence, that hidden wound beneath the surface of the company, beneath the city itself. Grace arrived just then, her face grim but resolute. She reached out and took the folder from my trembling hands. "This is it," she said, voice barely above a whisper. "We're finally seeing the truth behind what no one tells you. The story they hoped would stay buried." For the first time, in weeks I believed her. We made plans to bring this to light, to expose the cover-up, to demand answers, to finally give a voice to those erased from history. The fear, the paranoia, the creeping dread that had haunted my every step began to lift. It was a strange kind of relief, like waking up from a nightmare that leaves you feeling hollow but safe. But the relief was short-lived, because just as I started to breathe, to imagine a future where the mystery was solved, a single detail slipped into my awareness and shattered everything. It was a photograph, tucked deep in the folder, black and white, grainy, taken inside. The orphanage's main hall. A group of children, smiling and innocent, gathered around a woman in a nurse's uniform. but one face stood out. Not a child, not an adult, but something in between. The eyes were too large, too knowing, and the smile was too fixed, like a mask painted on a soul that wasn't quite there. And there, in the background, barely noticeable if you weren't looking, was a figure, a shadow, not cast by the light but by something else entirely. Watching. That figure didn't belong. I blinked, leaned closer. The shape seemed to shift, almost breathing in the stillness of the photo. My skin crawled as a memory I hadn't realized I was holding surfaced, sudden and unwelcome. A night from my childhood, a dream or maybe a memory glitch that had haunted me since I was a kid. The darkness of my bedroom, the sound of whispers just beyond hearing, the feeling of being watched by eyes that weren't there. The name, Hannah, had echoed in those moments too, long before I ever heard it from Christopher or Abby. Grace saw my face change and grabbed my arm. "You're not crazy," she said fiercely. "They lied to you. This isn't just some orphanage story. It's bigger, it's always been bigger." I wanted to ask what she meant, but the room suddenly felt too cold, too heavy with something I couldn't name, but knew had been there all along. Something patient. Something that had been watching us, watching me, since the beginning of this nightmare. It wasn't a person or a thing you could point to. It was a presence, pressure in the air, a weight on your mind, a silence that screamed. And then the phone buzzed. The screen lit up with a message from an unknown number. This time it wasn't just a word or a whisper. It was a video. Grainy, unstable, but unmistakable. It showed the waiting room where I'd first seen Christopher, the place where Abby disappeared. But this time, the camera was closer, shaking slightly, like someone was filming from a hiding spot. The footage revealed something I hadn't noticed before. A small door behind the receptionist's desk. A door no one mentioned, no one walked through during the interview. The door creaked open and a figure slipped inside. Not Christopher, not Abby, something darker. Something without a face. The video cut out suddenly. The screen went black. But the last image burned into my mind. The silhouette turning slowly, head tilted just enough to suggest it knew I was watching. And then, silence. I sat back, heart pounding, realizing the terrible truth. I wasn't the one uncovering the mystery. I was part of it. Every step I thought I took forward was pulling me deeper into something that had been orchestrated long before I arrived. The childhood memories, the voices, the disappearances, they were threads woven into a tapestry I didn't understand, but was trapped inside of. As the weight of this hit me, a single question settled like poison in my mind. What if everything I thought I knew, the interviews, the vanishings, the secrets, was just the surface of a deeper game, a game with rules I couldn't see and players I couldn't trust? What if the story I've told you so far isn't the story at all? And now, as you watch this, the unease should be creeping in too. The sense that you've lived through something like this, maybe a memory glitch buried in your own past, something no one told you about, something that feels eerily familiar but just out of reach. Because the truth isn't waiting for us at the end of this video. It's hiding in the corners of your mind, in the spaces between what you remember and what you don't. And until we find it, none of this, none of it, makes sense. Look back, rewatch, listen closer, because the hidden truth isn't behind the scenes. It's been in front of you all along, waiting for you to notice what they don't want you to remember. And that is the most dangerous secret of all. There's a quiet, unsettling weight settling over everything now, as if the walls around this story are closing in. Walls you can't see, yet feel pressing harder with every breath you take. Because the truth, as it turns out, isn't mine alone to carry. No, I'm not the only one pulled into this twisted maze where memory, identity, and reality blur into something unrecognizable. There are others. Watchers who have been silently tracking every move, every revelation, every glitch in the story I thought I owned. They're out there and they're watching you too, and they've been waiting for someone to notice. Late at night, after I shared the video, strange things began happening. Messages slipped through in the most unexpected ways, almost like signals hidden in static, fragments of communication that only the most attentive eyes could catch. Texts with no sender, emails with garbled subject lines that, when decoded, formed phrases like, "You were right all along," or "Look deeper. Found footage from 20 years ago is still out there." Images appeared, subtly altered photographs with symbols carved into shadows. Symbols that no one around me seemed to recognize, but which echoed in my dreams with terrifying clarity. I started to understand. This wasn't a story to be told, it was a code to be cracked. And you, if you're watching this, are part of it now. You've crossed the line into something bigger than you ever imagined. This isn't just about me, Christopher, or Abby. It's a network, a hidden web of lives and memories tangled beyond repair, all threaded together by a force so pervasive it's almost impossible to pinpoint. You'll begin to notice patterns, little visual symbols that show up repeatedly, in ways that defy coincidence, etched into the background of footage, whispered in conversations that feel too rehearsed, appearing on documents you might not even realize you've seen before. The signs are all there, quietly screaming, waiting for you to piece them together. One night, I woke from a dream that wasn't mine, or at least, it felt that way. I was in a room flooded with flickering lights and the hum of old machinery. Faces appeared and vanished, each one whispering a name I didn't recognize but felt drawn to remember. The dream shifted suddenly, like a jigsaw puzzle forcing pieces together, and in the final image I saw someone standing in the shadows, an observer. Not like me, not like Christopher or Grace, but someone who had been outside this whole nightmare, quietly pulling strings. I woke gasping, the phrase "what the government never released" echoing in my mind like a chant. I don't know if this observer is real or just a fractured part of my unraveling mind, but their presence lingers. A third perspective that challenges everything I've believed about what's happening. They're not just a witness. They might be the only one telling the truth. Their voice is woven through the static of hacked broadcasts and deep web files, their eyes watching from behind screens I can't access. They hint at something far older and more dangerous than a simple orphanage fire or corporate cover-up. A presence that feeds on memory itself, bending identity and reality until what you believe is yours slips away, replaced by something darker, something designed. And that raises questions that don't have answers. What does it mean to remember? To know who you are when the ground beneath your mind is shifting like quicksand? Who controls the story when every truth can be rewritten, every memory edited or erased? The deeper I dig, the more I realize that control isn't just about keeping secrets. It's about shaping reality itself, deciding which memories survive and which are buried forever. The watchers aren't just ghosts of the past. They're active, present, their influence spreading like a virus through time and space. Some nights when the lights flicker just right, I swear I can hear them. Whispers slipping through the white noise of the world. Voices promising that the story isn't finished, that the danger has only just begun. You might hear them too. If you listen closely, maybe that's why this feels so familiar, so personal, because the line between observer and participant is breaking down, and we're all trapped inside this story, whether we like it or not. This is the truth they never wanted you to find. The part of the mystery buried deeper than any document or interview. A force watching, waiting, shaping everything from the shadows. And as the screen flickers off, as the night grows colder, I can't help but wonder, who is really pulling the strings? And more importantly, how long before you realize you were never just watching this story unfold, you were living it all along? The answers are out there, hidden in the spaces between what you remember and what you don't. But the question remains, are you ready to face what comes next, or will you let the silence swallow you whole? The truth isn't waiting for us at the end of this video. It's already inside you. And it's watching. The air felt thick around Christopher now, heavy with a silence so complete it pressed into his bones like a weight he could no longer shrug off. He sat alone in the dim light of his apartment, the flickering glow from his laptop screen casting long shadows that danced and distorted against the walls, as if the very space itself was warping under the gravity of what he'd uncovered. This wasn't just about corrupted memories, hidden agendas, or the fractured reality he'd been forced to navigate. It was about something far deeper, something elemental to being human. The mystery had slipped past the what and who into the realm of why. Why this endless spiral of doubt, loss, and unanswerable questions? Why did this story reach into his soul and pull out his most fragile fears and regrets? And more terrifyingly, why did it feel like the answers could shatter him completely or somehow set him free? He thought back to the moment that had come to define everything, the whispered name Abby had spoken, the vanishing act that shattered time, the symbols that had crept into his dreams, the observer's voice haunting his every thought. All of now seemed less like a puzzle to be solved and more like a mirror held up to his fractured self, reflecting the tangled mess of memory, identity, and pain that we all carry, but so few dare to confront. This wasn't some supernatural trick or government conspiracy anymore. This was about the human mind's desperate, often brutal fight to hold on to truth when reality itself begins to unravel. Christopher's fingers trembled as he scrolled through old files, videos, recordings, fragmented diaries, all echoing a pattern of pain and loss, betrayals both overt and hidden, and moments of grace too fleeting to save but too raw to forget. And then it hit him. The real horror wasn't what had happened to him, or Abby or anyone else trapped in this web. It was that these events, these fractures, these secrets, were an echo of the universal struggle to be seen, to be understood, and to be remembered in a world that relentlessly erases us. What this mystery revealed wasn't just a hidden truth or a forgotten crime. It was the profound, aching vulnerability of being human. And yet, with that revelation came a crushing choice. To know this truth fully might obliterate the fragile sense of self Christopher had been clinging to, unravel the very threads of who he thought he was. But to turn away, to bury the questions, the memories, the pain, meant living in a shadow of lies, disconnected from the raw essence of life that demanded to be felt, even if it burned. In that moment, Christopher felt a crack open inside him, a raw wound bleeding both fear and hope. He understood that the truth was not a destination but a crucible, a place where one either breaks or is reforged anew. The silence shattered as his phone buzzed. A message from Abby. "I never told you everything," she typed, the words stark and trembling like a confession laid bare. His heart pounded as he read, "It's not just what we saw, Christopher. It's what we became because of it. We're not just victims of this mystery. We're part of it. And maybe, just maybe, we hold the key to ending it." The weight of her message settled deep in his chest, raw and unyielding, a moment of total vulnerability exposing the fissures in his armor. Here was a truth so personal, it felt like a reckoning, a moment where the fragile hope of salvation and the terror of destruction collided. In that charged space, Christopher realized the true climax wasn't about unmasking an external enemy or solving an unsolved mystery. It was about facing the darkness inside, the questions we never ask ourselves, the fears we hide beneath layers of denial and distraction. It was about accepting that some truths don't just live in the world around us. They live in the quiet recesses of our own hearts, in the memories we try to forget, the pain we dare not name, and the choices we fear to make. As he looked out into the night, the city's distant hum blending with the steady pulse of his own breath, Christopher felt himself waking, not just from a dream, but from a lifetime of half-truths and silent suffering. The story was no longer a tale told to him. It was a terrifying awakening to the fragile, luminous reality of being human. The lines between nightmare and hope blurred, and in that haze he found a sliver of something precious, a reason to keep searching, even when the path was shadowed in doubt. And to you watching now, caught in this unfolding storm, remember this is not just a story, it's a mirror. The reflection you see may be uncomfortable, unsettling, but it is also the raw pulse of life itself. What you choose to do with that reflection, that is the real mystery. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for stories you were never meant to hear. Until next time, remember, some truths don't want to be found.